The biggest example I've had for love in my life has been my parents. And it's a bit of a cool story, if you'll bear with me for that one. But they're on their 50th anniversary this year, so they have a long story of love throughout the years. But to me, the most poignant part of it is the beginning of it. To them, it was, if you imagine, if you will, back in the day, they were born in the 40s, so it was a different world back then than I have right now. And my father grew up in small farming land in Ontario, and my mother was in northern Saskatchewan, Cumberland-House. So different sides of the country, no reason that they should ever cross paths and become even knowing each other back in those days, because transportation was limited. But through a series of events, their lives, they met by the most random situation in Winnipeg, of all sorts of places, to me, which is a city of love now. Mom was there for just a weekend, hitchhiking through. My dad was on a motorcycle trip west, and his brother's motorcycle tire blew out, so they had to go back to Winnipeg. And so these two random events that brought two people from two different places to this city, where they met on the street, and then they met again in this boarding room where they were staying, just randomly staying, and then they met again in the evening at a dance. And just things tried to conspire to put these two random people together from different backgrounds. And it just, there's a lot of story there of the magic of how they met. It was amazing that spark of interest that they both found in each other drove them to find each other throughout, even though it was only for a weekend, a moment of meeting. Then they went different places in Canada and maintained contact throughout the years, to the point where my father was like, I have to meet this woman again. I have to be with her. And he told his family, and they were like, you're crazy. This idea of meeting this woman that you don't barely know. Through their correspondences, they got to know each other, but it was just this one meeting. He got on a motorcycle from Ontario, drove up. Back in the day, there's no highways, there's no roads. It was just, like a hunting trail to get up to Cumberland-House. So he drove this motorcycle through slick mud and tribulations to get to her. And he knew in that time that this is the woman that he wants to marry. Mom's reflection of love in her life at that time was she had to be moved back to Cumberland-House because her own mother had died, and so she was taking on being the eldest, adoption of her siblings. So there was 7 kids, and so my dad had this choice of do I marry into this where I instantly got a family, and such was his love that he knew I'm willing to make the sacrifice to absolve, leave my family behind, create a new family with raising these kids as my own. And the two of them made it through that. Many adventures where they moved to northern Saskatchewan away so that he could find work. The things that they did together, persevering through tribulations, poverty and tribulations of disease, things like my father breaking his back. My mom stayed through him through that. And back in the days, technology being what it was, medical science it wasn't swift. It was a long time for him to heal. And Mom loved him throughout. Fast forward through the years, they had their own children throughout time. My brother, and then my sister a few years after that. And then 10 years later, they had me unexpectedly. It's one of those things that they didn't anticipate. And through it all, family's been this huge connection to them. My own aunts and uncles who were raised by the mom and dad look at me as like a sibling in some regards. It's not this separation of aunt and uncle. It's this, we're very close. And to me, everything that I observe about it is love is family.